The events in tonight's episode are real, drawn from history, folklore, and whispered accounts. The Academy's connection to these events exists only in legend, as intended. Before you enter these halls, heed warning. Tonight's chilling tales are not for the faint of heart. All who enter must be prepared to explore stories of darkness, mystery, the macabre, and all of the darkest parts of humanity. If tales of true crime, the paranormal, or other creatures that go bump in the night unsettle you, turn back now. This is not the place for you. Also, by entering, you are now and forevermore an inductee to Dark Academy, bound by all rights and rituals. For those of you brave souls who stayed, welcome to Dark Academy. I'm Kristen, and I'll be your guide. We're going to another new spot tonight, the darkest part of the Academy. But it will be more comfortable than the previous new finds. So, follow me. Here we are. Come on in and take a seat. Just leave the seat at the head of the table for me. It'll be easier for y'all to see and hear me there. If you'll notice, there's a folder on the table in front of each of you. Please do not open it yet. As you know, I'm normally loose and free talking about the things we found in the Academy, but today we have something serious. No laughing. Kidding. I could never guarantee I wouldn't find humor in something, and I am no hypocrite. However, we do have to take this seriously. Our world is falling apart around us. It would seem that way anyway. I think I may know why. There is something I found. This place is so fascinating, people, finding new things every day. Here's what I know. There are many monsters living in the shadows. But some of the most dangerous hide among us in plain sight. Their souls seem hollow, as if they've been stripped of their humanity. Studying them isn't a job for the average investigator, so the Academy took on the task. You see, they didn't just watch the common criminal. They monitored the ones whose hearts had been touched by something far darker. Here, in the West Wing of the Academy, I discovered the files containing the findings of the Inanimate Souls Surveillance Initiative, or ISSI. This is where inductees of the past study the minds of those who have been influenced by the darkest forces, keeping track of those whose actions hinted at a demonic force behind them. This initiative has been neglected for decades. We must continue the surveillance for the safety of our people. Dark hearts have been roaming free for far too long. Tonight's case is solved and closed, so we no longer need to watch him. We are just using this as a case study. Well, let's get into it. We're heading back to the 1970s, the decade of serial killers. One of them, anyway. This was the post-counterculture of the 60s. But many of the ideals and behaviors still existed. People were still skeptical of authority, something that still lingers to this day. There was also still free love and drug experimenting. People, especially young college students, hitchhiked regularly. It was part of the culture at that point. They were wrapped up in their freedom, rebellion, and laid-back California beachy vibes. It sounds like a dream, honestly. Beneath that were a few people with different dreams. Fulfilled dreams that changed the culture forever. With many active serial killers in the area, hitchhiking declined. There were many who ignored the dangers and continued in their free-willing ways. Without this disregard, our dark heart of today's case study would have had to find a different way to catch his prey. But before we get into his killing spree, let's get a little background info on our subject. We're talking about Edmund Kemper, or the co-ed killer. He stood out above the rest of the serial killers at a towering 6'9". You can go ahead and open your folders now. As you can see from the picture of him with the prison guards, he is very large. Anyone trying to kill you is terrifying enough, but these women had to deal with that. He is most well known as the co-ed killer because of his victims, but his other monikers were Big Ed and the Ogre of Aptos. If this were anybody else, I'd say that last one was quite rude. Ed was always large. At just 4, he was a head taller than the other kids, and 6'4" by the age of 15. Though it's an added layer of fear, his height is not the most terrifying thing about him. So let's get into the nurture side of what probably took an animate soul to an inanimate one and landed him in the Academy files in the first place. Edmund Kemper III was born in Burbank, California on December 18, 1948. He was the middle of 3 children, born to Clarnell Elizabeth Kemper and Edmund Emil Kemper Jr. There are 3 Edmund Kempers in this story, Senior, Junior, and our killer, the 3rd. When referring to the co-ed killer, I will just call him Kemper. His father and grandfather will be Kemper Jr. and Sr. He was close to his father, but his relationship with his mother was challenging. In 1957, when Kemper was 9 years old, his parents divorced and his dad moved out. His dad, who was a World War II vet, was quoted as saying, "Suicide missions in wartime, and the latter, atomic bomb testings, were nothing compared to living with Clarnell." Okay, if you look at the next photo, you'll see Clarnell. It's been said Clarnell could only see Kemper as a reminder of her disappointment in men. She would make fun of his size, belittle and humiliate him, saying no woman would ever love him. She was domineering, verbally abusive, and a neurotic alcoholic. Some say she might have suffered from borderline personality disorder. I read she would lock him in a basement at night with just a light, fearing he would harm his sisters. It's also said there was a trapdoor. In an interview, Kemper said none of that was true. He did say he equated the upstairs to heaven and the basement to hell with darkness and scary demons. He was a little boy, but it was more like a bedroom. Clarnell was just trying to solve space problems, so he didn't have to share a bedroom with the girls. I've noticed a lot of what we think we know about childhood and parental relationships of serial killers has been disputed by the killers themselves in interviews. There are facts to back it up, so I don't know where these rumors start. Maybe it's a need to separate themselves from something, like the only people who raise killers are people who are monsters themselves. I don't know. It's hard to determine if parenting is the main cause, since many serial killers show disturbing signs early, leaning more toward the nature side of the coin. At the age of 10, he buried a family cat. Alive. Yeah. He later dug it up, decapitated it, then mounted its head on a spike. At 13, he killed another family cat because it favored his younger sister. I wonder why. He hid those remains in his closet, though, until his mother found them years later. His sister would find her dolls without their heads or hands. But at the same time, who among us did not pop the heads off the dolls, or was that just me? And I'm not on his side. It's just that some of the things they say is concerning behavior is often normal for many kids if you take each individual thing by itself. Now, when you combine them all, it does get disturbing. He later said he got off to hearing the heads pop off. This is where our commonality ends. What was he doing with the doll heads and hands, anyway? Performing strange rites and rituals with them, apparently. This was thought to be one of the first indicators of his dark fantasies. Kemper said it wasn't anything crazy, it was simply revenge for his sister's breaking a new toy gun he had just got. So he broke her dolls. Tracks for kids, I guess. No explanation of the rituals, though. When Clarnell saw what he did, she called him a sick pervert. And rightfully so. And I can't say that I wouldn't have said the same, especially back in the day before parents considered kids' feelings. His older sister seemed a bit abusive as well. Nothing major, just push him in front of a train, stuff like that. And later pushed him into the deep end of a swimming pool, nearly causing him to drown. I read in one article she tried to seduce him, but I could not confirm that, so take that with a grain of salt. He developed a crush on his second grade teacher, so he did the only natural thing. He stalked her, going to her house with a bayonet. His sister teased him about this crush, saying, "Why don't you kiss her?" He said, casually, "If I kiss her, I'd have to kill her first." That response was indicative of his future behaviors. Many found the games he would play disturbing, such as gas chamber and electric chair with his sister. But again, who among us? Since you're here, I'm guessing you played similar games growing up as well. No judgment. Doesn't make us all serial killers. But again, when you put it all together, it's a bit much. Kemper said it wasn't a big deal either. and we can trust him. He was playing the games with his younger sister and a friend. His older sister was often gone with friends since she was 5 years older. My kids are almost 5 years apart, so that makes sense to me. Though Kemper later suggested his mother wasn't as bad as originally led on, his perception of her was different as a kid. He was desperate to escape the abuse, so he ran away to his father's house in LA. His dad did let him stay, but he did have a new wife and stepson. Those of us who have experienced them know that blended families can be difficult anyway. So it didn't take long for this setup to sour. They were disturbed by Kemper's behaviors, of course. But one specific event sealed his departure date. His stepmother was coming out of the shower. You could probably guess where this is going. She expected privacy to dry off and get dressed, as she should. Instead, she found her 6'4" stepson standing in the doorway, staring silently. Staring's bad enough, but you just standing there silently, like, that's so creepy. She tried to pass, but he blocked the exit. After a tense moment, he did step aside, but only to follow her, deeply disturbed by his behavior. She convinced her husband that Edmund needed to be sent away. I tell you what, I'd have probably been his first kill, because there's no way I would just stand there and not say anything and not go off on that kid. I don't care how big he is. But I'm not judging her. So, the next Christmas, the family traveled to his grandparents' ranch. It's this small town in the Sierra Nevada foothills. It sounds amazing. So, look in your folder again. I want you to turn to the next page to see a photo of the ranch and the town, which today marks the entrance to the Sierra Vista Scenic Byway. So it was a beautiful place to visit for the holidays. When the family festivities ended, though, Kemper Jr., his wife, his stepson, left the ranch without Kemper. They just left him. So I'm sure he was pretty upset. Kemper hated being at the ranch. I don't know why he didn't run away back to his mom's house, but he stayed. So take a look at the next two photos. It's the Kempers, Edmund Sr. and Maud, Kemper's grandparents. Very good looking couple. His grandfather made an effort to bond with him, at least, so he even took him hunting, but he has advanced memory loss, so it made that difficult. To Kemper, his grandfather was nothing more than a senile old man. To his grandmother, Maud, Kemper Sr. was this shadow of the strong, capable partner he once was. As his memory faded, Maud had to assume full responsibility for caring for him. She had her hands full. Now, she's supposed to whip a 6'4" teenage boy into shape, whose own parents had to drop him off like a dog at the pound. Lady was tired and cranky, I'm sure, and who could blame her? But Edmund didn't see the overwhelmed woman doing her best, as most teenagers don't. All he saw was another sharp-tongued matriarch who, in his eyes, had it out for men. She talked down to him, belittled his grandfather, and sounded an awful lot like his mother. In his mind, he began to notice a pattern. Women were the problem. The tension between him and Maud was virtually constant. Loud, heated, and always one wrong word from an explosion. Maud did not trust Kemper and grew afraid of him. She thought he would go to town and get into trouble, so she kept him home. He was able to take guns out hunting small animals, but for some reason, Maud did not like him killing birds. It became kind of a thing. And you might be thinking, as I was, why would you give a gun to a teenage boy you don't trust? But it was a different time. This does tell us he did not just sit in the house all day long. Either way, never leaving the ranch made Kemper feel isolated and angry. So, like any sane person, he began to fantasize about killing her. So here we go. On August 27, 1964, he and Maud had a nasty fight. They'd argued many times before, but this one felt different. He went outside to cool off. But instead of letting him, she yelled at him from inside the house. "Don't you shoot any birds." I paraphrase. Kemper was done. He went to the shed and got his .22 rifle. Maud saw what he had and yelled at him, fearfully I'm sure, to put the gun down. But he didn't put the gun down. He pointed it at her head and shot twice. When she went down, he shot her once more in the back, just to be sure. Some reports claim he had grabbed a kitchen knife and stabbed her repeatedly. Others leave that part out. Either way, she was no longer on this plane. But instead of leaving her where she fell, he had to go further. He dragged her body into her bedroom. And as disturbing as it is, Kemper found a twisted satisfaction in her permanent silence, no longer able to criticize. His dark humor got the better of him. Well, she should be happy with me. I didn't kill a bird. His grandfather arrived home from the store. Kemper wanted to spare his grandfather the horror of finding his wife's murdered body. He claims it was merciful, the kind of mercy few minds understand. While unloading groceries, Kemper snuck up behind him and shot him in the back of the head. He did not enjoy killing his grandfather like he did Maud, but by Kemper's logic, it was necessary. So, what do you do after permanently shutting up one woman in your life? You call the other. Clarnell told him to call the police. When authorities arrived, they found Kemper just sitting calmly on the porch. They asked him why he did it. He said, without emotion, "I just wanted to see what it felt like to shoot Grandma." I'm sure that statement right there got the Academy's attention. Sounds pretty inanimate to me. But just a reminder, he was only 15 years old at this time. So he was evaluated by the court. He was appointed a psychiatrist who diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia and sent him to Atascadero State Hospital, a maximum security facility for the criminally insane. However, the hospital's psychiatrists and social workers disagreed with the court's diagnosis, finding no evidence of delusions, hallucinations, or bizarre thinking. Instead, they diagnosed him with a less severe, but still serious, personality disorder. Later it was released he reported being molested by an extended family member, but I couldn't find any more on that, nor does it seem to be relevant. They did also note how smart and introspective he was. His IQ was first tested at 136, which is already high, like top 2% of the population high. But later he was retested and scored at 145, top 1%, genius level. So not only is he huge and scary, he's smart enough to not get caught, as long as he doesn't tell on himself. Kemper spent 5 years at Atascadero, and during this time he became a model prisoner. He took pride in his work. He was even trained to administer psychiatric evaluations to other inmates. He also took pride in learning how to manipulate the system. Remember how smart he is. He figured out how to beat the test to fake normal. He also took mental notes on the ways of sex offenders, information he'd later use on women. It was less like a reform center and more like a serial killer prep school. Lesson 1. Don't leave a witness. You have to kill them. On his 21st birthday, Kemper used some of his knowledge to trick the hospital into thinking he was actually reformed. They released him on probation. You kill your grandparents, you get out in 5 years. The way he continued to talk about his mother, I'm sure his psychiatrist got an earful for years, so he strongly advised against Kemper living with his mother. But he was released to her care anyway. Though this does seem crazy, where else would he go? He killed his grandparents. His dad and family don't want him. I've heard nothing of Clarnell's parents, but I seriously doubt they want to be the other grandparents killed. While he was in prison, his mother had married and divorced and moved a couple of times. At the time of his release, she lived in Aptos, California, which was close to her job at the University of California, Santa Cruz, UCSC, as an administrative assistant. He seemed to do well over the next 3 years. He continued to live with his mom while attending community college, setting his sights on becoming a police officer. Did you know you could get turned away for your height? I didn't. You can carry a gun around as a police officer, but you can't be too big? Or is it a uniform size thing? But he kept in touch with several of the Santa Cruz police officers. He even hung out at their favorite spot. It was called the Jury Room. They called him Big Ed. He eventually landed a job with California's Highway Patrol. How would you like Big Ed pulling you over for speeding? No, thank you. That'd be enough to make me go the speed limit. He did so well, though, that the psychiatrist believed he was completely rehabilitated. Here's what his probation psychiatrist had to say. If I were to meet this young man without knowing his history, I would perceive him as a very well-adjusted individual, full of initiative and intelligence, showing no sign of psychiatric issues. It's my belief that he has responded exceptionally well to his years of treatment and rehabilitation. I don't see any psychiatric reason to view him as a danger to himself or others. Therefore, I think it would be reasonable to consider expunging his juvenile record permanently, as this could help him enjoy more freedom in adulthood and develop his full potential. On November 29, 1972, his juvenile record was permanently expunged. During this time, he and his mother often had terrible fights, so nothing's really changed. He said, "My mother and I started right in on horrendous battles. Just horrible battles. Violent and vicious. I've never been in such a vicious verbal battle with anyone. I would go to fists with a man, but this was my mother, and I couldn't stand the thought of my mother and I doing these things. She insisted on it and just over stupid things. I remember one roof raiser was over whether I should have my teeth cleaned." Well, my input, yes, you should. Anyway, he saved up enough money to move out, but his mother would often surprise him with calls and visits. While working for the highway patrol and riding a motorcycle, he was hit by a car. He sued the driver and won $15,000, which is the equivalent of more than $100,000 today. With that money, he bought a 1969 Ford Galaxy and started driving around town. In the 70s, people were hitchhiking everywhere. Women who went to school with men were given the name co-eds. So Kemper began to drive around these hitchhiking co-eds, safely dropping off about 150 people. This is what he would do after fights with his mother. But during this time, he started having fantasies of killing. He felt frustrated with the girls he picked up, feeling like they were flaunting their freedom in front of him. Like, you didn't have freedom? I don't get it. Anyway, he began carrying plastic bags and handcuffs in his car. Okay, so please turn to the next page in your folder. You'll see two college-age girls, roommates Mary Ann Pesch and Anita Marie Lucchesa. On May 7th, 1972, Kemper picked them up. They asked to be taken to Stanford University. Most of the girls he picked up were hippie type. Dirty and smelly, as he said. Those girls didn't interest him. Mary and Anita seemed upper middle class. Snobby killer. At gunpoint, he took them to a secluded place he knew about from his time with the highway patrol. Tying Anita up in the car, he took Mary to the woods where he fatally stabbed her. When he returned to the car alone, he convinced Anita that Mary was hurt and needed her help. He said she got smart with him. So he hit her, breaking her nose. As she got out and walked behind the car, he stabbed her. She fell into the trunk, so he pushed her in the rest of the way and closed the lid. Kemper couldn't find his keys, so he started to panic and run away. I mean, like, what a doofus. But before he could get very far, he tripped over his own gun he forgot he had. He was freaking out. But once he calmed down, he found his keys in his pockets. Kemper's mission was back on. Something he later said that was a little baffling is that he was embarrassed he accidentally brushed Mary's breast when he was handcuffing her. He even said, "Whoops, sorry." Like, you're about to kill her, but you feel the need to apologize for touching her? Okay. Especially baffling after we find out what he does next. He placed both bodies in the back of his car and drove them to his apartment. While on the way, a police officer stopped him for having a broken taillight. Oh, it could have all been over. But he let him go. I'm just going to leave it there. Somehow, he got the bodies into his apartment without anyone seeing. Once alone, when his roommate wasn't home, yes, someone else lived with him, he took pictures of their bodies and raped them. After dismembering their bodies, he placed them in a plastic bag to dispose of them near Loma Prieta Mountain. Everything but their heads. Those he performed Iramatio on before dumping. Just gross. He did eventually dump them because Mary's skull was found in August of that year, but they never found any other body parts. Anita was never found at all. Next page of your folders, please. Here you'll see 15-year-old Eiko Ku. In September 1972, Eiko missed the bus trying to get to dance class. Little baby going to dance class. Her friend saw her thumbing a rod from across the street, but couldn't get to her before she got in a car. Kemper's car. That would never leave my mind. He picked her up, but as you can guess, he did not take her to dance class. He drove her to a secluded place, just like the others. There, he pulled a gun on her, but somehow locked himself out of the car, with the gun inside. I mean, he is just a goofball. Obviously, he's got a problem keeping up with his stuff. Before he got out, he told Eiko he was suicidal. He was planning to kill her as well. But when trying to convince her to let him back in the car, he convinced her he would only kill himself. Poor baby believed him and unlocked the door and let him back in the car, where he strangled her until she was unconscious. Then he raped her, then killed her. I hope she was actually unconscious for all of that and never knew what he did to her. This time, instead of going home immediately, like he did before, he went to the bar to have a few drinks. In the parking lot, he even opened the trunk to admire what he called his catch. He is disgusting. He drove home eventually and repeated his post-mortem rituals of taking pictures, raping, dismembering, and disposing of her body. Eiko's mother reported her missing and put up hundreds of flyers, but no information ever came from it. She was never found. Next page in your folder. Here we have 18-year-old Cindy Shaw. On January 7th, 1973, Kemper picked up Cindy from the Cabrillo College campus. Again, he took her to a secluded location, but this time he killed her with a .22 caliber pistol. Afterwards, he brought her back to his mother's house, where he was living. Instead of doing his rituals immediately, he hid her in a closet for the night. Reminds me of the cat he hid in the closet. Once his mother went to work, he removed the bullets, raped and dismembered her. He tossed her body parts over a cliff, but kept her head for several days to carry on his usual disgusting acts. He did something very interesting after this. He buried her head in his mother's garden, face up, because she liked when people looked up to her. On a documentary, though, one of the police claimed it was Kemper who wanted her to look up to him, not his mother. Her body parts did wash up on the shore of Santa Cruz near the pier. Everything but her head, because we know where it is, or was. The medical examiner determined she had been cut into pieces with a power saw. How do people not hear that? This is when the public was informed there was a serial killer on the loose. Co-eds were instructed to only accept rides from cars with campus stickers. I guess they couldn't imagine it would be one of their own. The only problem was the killer had a sticker. You see, Kemper's mom worked at ISSI, so she was able to get one for him to be able to go on campus. So this precaution was useless for Kemper's next victims. Next page in your folder is Rosalind Heather Thorpe and Allison Helen Liu. On February 5th, 1973, Kemper picked up Rosalind, who was trying to get a ride after her lecture. She thought he was just another student, so she started to talk to him. He saw Allison trying to get a ride, so he picked her up too. Not far from where he picked them up, not a secluded location, he slowed down and just shot Rosalind. When he turned around to shoot Alice, she panicked and ducked, which made him miss her the first 2 times, but he ultimately fatally shot her in the head. The next photo you'll see is of the apartment Kemper was living in with his mother. Kemper drove there and beheaded them inside the car right in front of the apartment. But he did take them inside to finish the rituals, so I'm not sure why he did it out in the car. Some of their remains were found the following week, and more were found in March. When he was later asked why he took the heads, he said, "The head trip fantasies were a bit like a trophy. You know, the head is where everything is at. The brain, eyes, mouth, that's the person. I remember being told as a kid, You cut off the head and the body dies. The body is nothing after the head is cut off. Well, that's not quite true. There's a lot left on a girl's body without the head. Even with his outlet, he and his mother continued to fight. It had been 2 months since the last 2 girls. He decided he didn't want to kill any more girls. He wanted to keep it between his mom and him. Next time they fought, he threw her on the bed to scare her. Normally, this is when he would drive around looking for prey, but he wanted to prove to himself he could keep it together. So he did go driving and picked up 2 girls from Berkeley. He thought of killing them the entire time, but instead, he dropped them off at their college, fully alive. Could you imagine finding out after the fact that you were in the car with a serial killer and he didn't kill you somehow? But that was when he realized he had to die or more girls were going to die. He decided to kill himself and his mom. On April 20th, 1973, Clarnell came home from a party. This woke him up, so he went to the door of her bedroom where she was reading a book. She said, "I suppose you want to stay up all night and chat now." He replied, "No, good night." Once she was asleep, he snuck into her room and bludgeoned her with a claw hammer and slit her throat with a penknife. Then he removed her head and said he humiliated her corpse. Apparently, one of their arguments was that she had not had sex in 7 years because of him, her murderous son. So he was like, "There, now you have." He placed her head on a shelf and shouted at it, throwing darts at it, and smashed her face. He cut out her tongue and voice box, trying to put them in the garbage disposal. But unable to break it down, the vocal cords were shot back up into the sink. He thought that was fitting, since she had bitched and yelled at him so much over the years. He then hid her body in a closet and went to a bar to drink. When he returned, he asked his mother's neighbor and best friend, 59-year-old Sarah Taylor, or Sally, Hallett, to come over for dinner and a movie. The next page of your folder shows a photo of Clarnell and Sally. When she got to the house, though, he strangled her. But instead of his normal defilement, he hid her in the closet and wrote a note that said, "Approximately 5:15 a.m. Saturday. No need for her to suffer any more at the hands of this horrible, murderous butcher. It was quick, asleep, the way I wanted it, not sloppy and incomplete, gents. Just a lack of time. I got things to do." He left driving as though he were in an active police chase manhunt. He took 3 guns and hundreds of rounds of ammunition and drove nonstop using caffeine pills, NoDoz, to stay awake. He drove all the way to Colorado, later saying he didn't realize Colorado was so desolate. Driving alone through those mountains is where he began to consider turning himself in. He was sure he would be on the news, but instead he heard nothing when he got to Pueblo. So he called the police himself, telling them where to find his mom and her friend and where he was. They didn't even believe him. They told him to call back later. So he called someone he knew personally on the force. After he was taken into custody, he confessed to killing the 6 college students. Later on, they asked him why he decided to turn himself in. He said, "The original purpose was gone. It wasn't serving any physical or real or emotional purpose. It was just a pure waste of time. Emotionally, I couldn't handle it much longer. Toward the end there, I started feeling the folly of the whole damn thing. And at the point of near exhaustion, near collapse, I just said to hell with it and called it all off." He was charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder. Because he confessed, the only defense his lawyers could argue was innocence by reason of insanity. However, 3 psychiatrists from the court determined that he was legally sane, so the trial went on as scheduled on October 23, 1973. He did attempt to take his own life twice, but was unsuccessful. One psychiatrist gave Kemper a truth serum, causing Kemper to admit to cannibalism, slicing off flesh, frying it, and eating it. Kemper later recanted this confession, saying he only said it in an attempt to ensure the death penalty. During the trial, he took the stand claiming there were 2 beings inside of him, and he would black out when the killer would take over. But he also said he wanted to keep the victims for himself, like possessions. Somehow, the jury found him to be sane and guilty on all accounts. I mean, I get the guilty part, but sane? He asked for the death penalty to be killed by torture, but there was a moratorium placed on capital punishment, so he received 7 to life for each count to be served concurrently. He was placed at California Medical Facility in Vacaville, California. I put a photo of the facility in the folder if you'd like to take a look. I always find this so creepy, but Kemper is still alive. He's still in the medical facility. I think the academy had plants in these facilities, or connections at least. They would let us know if anybody got out. Once he was in this facility, he has a new diagnosis. Well, multiple diagnoses. Antisocial, narcissistic, sociotypal personality disorders. I was curious why someone who talks so much is considered antisocial, so I looked it up. MayoClinic.org overview says antisocial personality disorder, sometimes called sociopathy, is a mental health condition in which a person consistently shows no regard for right or wrong and ignores the rights and feelings of others. People with antisocial personality disorder tend to purposefully make others angry or upset and manipulate or treat others harshly or with cruel indifference. They lack remorse or do not regret their behavior. People with antisocial personality disorder often violate the law, become criminals. They may lie, behave violently or impulsively, and have problems with drug and alcohol use. They have difficulty consistently meeting responsibilities related to family, work, or school. So I guess it's more of the opposite of what's socially acceptable and not what we think of antisocial, in that they don't socialize. I still found this diagnosis curious because he does seem to feel some remorse and regret for what he did, since he has helped law enforcement try to prevent others from killing. He knows what he did was wrong. And supposedly he didn't and doesn't struggle to do his work. In fact, he excels at it, even being assigned a job of scheduling other patients' appointments with psychiatrists. But I'm no psychiatrist, and they see and know things that we don't. Plus, we did find out earlier that he has learned how to act normal. So, see my confusion as an attempt to understand and not an argument against the professionals who diagnose him. Plus, I read a later report that a source from inside the hospital claims he actually shows no remorse for his actions and loves to retell the stories and tell the details of his sick pleasures. So, who knows? You'd think he'd be locked up and they'd throw away the key, but he has been up for parole 14 times. The thought that they would ever release any serial killer baffles me. When denied in 1988, he said, "Society is not ready in any way, shape, or form for me. I can't fault them for that." 4 of those times, he waived his right for parole. In 2007, prosecutor Ariadne Simons said, "We don't care how much of a model prisoner he is because of the enormity of his crimes." And I say bravo. He was actually up for parole this last year, but he didn't show up. It was reported he is wheelchair-bound due to suffering from a stroke and having diabetes. I read somewhere else he uses the wheelchair, but he isn't stuck in it. He was also reported to be high risk to reoffend because he grabbed a staff member's butt during a diaper change. Like, that's bold. You need your diaper changed and you're trying to get sexy? I think not. So, still a pig at the very least. Though he was a monster. He has also helped law enforcement to understand the mind of a serial killer, assisting in creating profiles of murderers that helped lead to many arrests. He was a favorite of FBI profiler John Douglas, portrayed as Holden Ford in Mindhunter, a Netflix series based on the book of the same name, following the life of FBI agents on the mission to understand the criminal mind. The character Wendy Carr is based on researcher, author, and psychiatric nurse, clinical specialist, Ann Burgess. She tells the story of Douglas's partner, Robert Ressler, his experience that led to a policy change for the team. He was stuck in the interview room when Kemper said, "The guard isn't coming back. They're on change of shift. He's not going to be here for 30 minutes. In that time, I could snap your head and leave it on the table. I'd own the prison then. I killed an FBI agent." When the guard came back, Kemper said he was just joking. So funny. FBI agents were required to conduct interviews in pairs from that point on. Seems like they should have from the beginning, but who am I? It is a wonder if he truly wants to help or if he just enjoys discussing his crimes for his own sick pleasure. He claims he's so upfront about his crimes and why he did what he did so he can save others like himself from killing. He gave an interview on a show called Murder, No Apparent Motive. At the end, he said, "There's somebody out there that is watching this and hasn't done that. Hasn't killed people and wants to. Rages inside and struggles with the feeling, or is so sure they have it under control. They need to talk to somebody about it. Trust somebody enough to sit down and talk about something that isn't a crime. Thinking that way isn't a crime. Doing it isn't just a crime, it's a horrible thing. It doesn't know when to quit, and it can't be stopped easily once it starts." It is easy to get caught up in this man's brain, his introspection, his attempt to help police figure out ways to identify perpetrators. It's easy to get caught up in his story. But no matter how entertaining and insightful he is, always remember, this man is a monster. Given that he claims he's a Christian now, and I know a lot of people think it's crap when murderers say that, there will never be enough penance in the eyes of the victims' families, and I don't know if my human brain could accept it either if it were my friend or family. But that's between him and God now. I guess we'll find out when we get there. So, a random fact that I didn't really know where to put in the rest of the story. He has recorded a bunch of audiobooks, including children's books. So, rush out to find those to play for your little ones. And that's the dark and chilling tale of Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. Please close your folders and place them where you found them. Please do not take any research out of the building unless given permission. The Academy knows. You don't want to be on the Academy's bad side. I'll walk you out, but next time, we'll be back in the library covering another movie and going through some related cases. Okay, I've heard a few people talk about Sleepaway Camp 1983. Some say it's a waste of time, other ones say it's not that great, but the ending is a great twist you'll never see coming. But my husband accidentally ruined that for me, so I'm gonna stick with the classic Friday the 13th. Go watch or rewatch it so we can discuss it. Also, I've been back and forth about it, but I've finally decided that the best thing to do is just to separate these two podcasts. I'm gonna leave all of the Southern Bells and Chilling Tales episodes here. Also, the Dark Academy episodes I've already released are going to stay here, but I'm also going to release those onto a new podcast, started with Casey Jo Stoddard and Scream. I won't be posting any more new ones here. It'll all be over on the new one. It will also be called Dark Academy Podcast. I'm going to change this one back to Southern Bells and Chilling Tales. So sorry for all the confusion. Hopefully separating this it'll be done. Well, thank you for joining me here at Dark Academy. I hope you've enjoyed this dark and chilling tale, and we'll come back next time for another one. Don't forget to leave a review for this episode in the comment section below. I'll try to post pictures and other content on TikTok and Instagram at Dark Academy Pod. If you'd like to review the whole show, you can do that on Apple Podcasts. You can rate us on any of the apps, and please do. It really helps a small show like this one. You can also email me at darkacademypod@gmail.com. Thanks again for listening, and I'll meet you here next time. Same time, same place, for it's always midnight at Dark Academy. Bye!